Very good evening, the august audience here, and privileged to have such a lovely panel here. In our gas conclave today, we have a subject of how to accelerate exploration production industry. And on the dais, you heard the session conductor introducing all of our panelists. We have a representation from the Exploration Production Regulator, we have a public sector undertaking, we have an international oil company, we have Indian oil company, and we also are here with public sector's regional E&P company as well. In my first question to the panelists, I would wonder as to how they want to represent their company with respect to any good things that they did in the last 2 to 3 years to take the sector forward to indeed accelerate exploration production sector. And more importantly, in the context of today's session, how have they helped more gas become available to the economy? Do you want to take Mr. Sharma to start with? What did Oil India do in the last 2-3 years?
First of all, I would like to thank everyone for organizer for giving me this opportunity to be in the part of this panel. And coming to the company as such, I'm representing Oil India Limited, national oil company, working in, actually the company has grown along with the petroleum industry in India, right from the 1889 till now, and it is still in the business. Coming to the question that last 3 years, actually, Oil India has taken, I would like to say very fondly that we have taken a drastic change in the approach, and then with the help of help regime coming up into the existence, and we have participated into aggressive bidding rounds, and by now, actually, there is around 7-fold increase in our acreages in exploration front. So it has been grown to around 63,000 square kilometer area. And then within this coming 3 years, actually, we are into a aggressive exploration activity. And then we are looking forward to bring in category 2 and category 3 basins into the mainland of India with our exploration approach. And coming to the main producing area where we have been producing so much, what we are doing is actually we are having an aspirational program of increasing our production by almost 1 million ton, because Oil India has been maintaining its production for almost 6 decades, 3 million metric ton from the operational area of 5,000 square kilometer. And now we are actually having an aspirational plan to increase our production to a 4.4 plus million metric ton by coming 23-24, or if not so another year 24-25.
Interesting. Interesting. So somewhere during NELP 6th round, PwC brought out a publication called Wealth of Nations. I read that a few months back once more, and I did not find even one line of that irrelevant even after these 15 years. One of the points in that was public sector oil companies, what we globally call them as national oil companies, are meant to be the wealth of nation. Oil India, ONGC, these companies have proven that sentence beyond par. They continue to get acreage awards, be it through nomination rounds earlier or through competitive rounds, and continue to build the asset base under their belt to service the nation through its hydrocarbon. And the time will prove as to how efficiently Mr. Sharma comes out with his discoveries and servicing more gas. In time to come, I'll ask him more questions, but equivalent, Pankaj.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to ET for conducting a forum like this. It is very heartening to see not only like-minded people, but veterans coming on stage and giving their amazing level of knowledge. So it's a wonderful forum. Thank you so much for that. Talking about Essar, and specifically to the question that you spoke about, Deepak. We are a showcase for CBM in India. We possibly were the only operator which not only got awarded CBM, but have really made laurels out of that. We have drilled 350 wells. We currently produce about 1 million standard cubic meters of gas. And all that gas, over the last 1 year, now is being supplied through GAIL to every nook and corner of the country. So that way, the last 1 year has been transformational, not only for CBM per se, but even for GAIL through this Urja Ganga pipeline. So I think it has been a stupendous journey to not only showcase what CBM can do, what CBM brings forward, but more importantly, towards all the decarbon and the previous sessions that we witnessed. All those sessions really are a true testimony to the work which has been done by Essar. What we are poised for is to drill more wells, to take the production from the current 1 million to almost 3 to 4 million standard cubic meters over the next 2 to 3 years. But more importantly, ensuring that we become a hub and a showcase for entire CBM operations to be run in India. We will be too glad to share our experiences with anybody to come forward and take it forward from there.
Amazing. An example of an Indian company contributing to the further enrichment of the gas sector. On behalf of Pankaj, let me also mention that you helped a urea company to commission and bring additional manufacturing of agrochemicals on table, which has been an aspiration of India. Again, feather in your cap. Thank you so much. When I call perseverance, I can't forget HOEC. Mr. Elango.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Deepak. First of all, normally when we go to conference of this nature, generally you see lots of known faces, because mostly within the E&P sector, we know each other very well. First time I saw several new faces. Most of you are from CGD, and the CGD sector has really made gas a popular commodity by making your presence all over India. To answer the question of Deepak, we've done two things. First is we focused on Northeast and developed a field called DROC in partnership with Oil India and IOC. We introduced what we call India's first modular gas processing plant, which means the plant was fabricated, built outside India, brought in 40 containers and set it up in the rock field, all within a matter of 27 months. So from the time we drilled the well, we brought the field to production within 27 months. The field is producing 1 million cubic meters of gas per day. Then we focused on the discovered small field. We won a block in Mumbai High called B80. Once again, we focused on a fast track mode and brought in India's first mobile offshore processing plant and started the gas production just a couple of months back. And we are producing about 0.3 million cubic meters of gas per day. And we'll soon be commencing oil production also from there. In this last 5 years, HOEC being a small independent company managed to invest about 1,000 crores in developing discovered fields through a fast-track, low-cost model. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elango. So when it comes to new gas to the field, BP can't be forgotten with Reliance.
Thanks, Deepak, and thank you once again for my behalf to the organizers for having me here. So I think a lot has been said about this, but I think just to reiterate, BP along with Reliance, we have invested close to about $12 billion, about 90,000 crores to bring on stream 2 fields to date. What we'd like to do is really express our appreciation to the DGH and the government for actually facilitating and helping us bring these fields online through this difficult phase of COVID. Because a lot of things were getting held up, but with the help and support that we got, we were able to bring the second field online during COVID. These fields together today, I think, or yesterday, I think we crossed a milestone of 20 million cubic meters per day of production. We have a third field in the block, which is in very advanced stage of completion. We expect to have it producing somewhere in the new year, early in the new year, and we will, with that, as it ramps up production and reaches its peak, we expect to hit about 30 million cubic meters per day of production. which, given currently, India produces roughly about 80 million cubic meters per day of production from domestic gas. By the time that field comes online, it will be 90. So it'll be a third of India's domestic production by that point in time. So what we look and what we want to see is actually, we want to keep contributing to the growth of domestic gas production in India, because we believe that, there is a lot more to be done in this arena, and we are quite excited about it.
Thank you so much. There was a purpose for me to go around with the industry, Mr. Reddy. I don't know if ET has a coincidence of bringing some success stories on table, or it is a representation of the sector. But I thought I'll ask you, how did Government of India, DGH, make this happen? Bring smiles to production companies, bring all operational difficulties aside, but invest more and get gas to surface?
Thank you, Deepak, for asking me this question. See, we just don't the role of, rather than being called as a regulator, we would like to be known as the facilitator. That doesn't mean that we forget about our role as a sort of, a regulated way how the contract is monitored and the reservoir management is done. See, the very purpose why DGH has been formed is basically two goals. One is, of course, it's the end thing is to increase the domestic production of oil and gas, but that is also through a proper contract management, which has evolved because of the economic liberalization of the country, and wherein, upstream industry also has opened up their doors for the overseas investment, both in financial and technological terms. And the next one is with regarding to reservoir management, because in the past we had certain issues with regarding to the reservoir management of the major fields of the country, and there were several committees which were formed, and the committees said, yes, we need to have a agency to look after the things. That's how the DGH has formed. And instead of donning the responsibility of just a regulator and stifling the potential investors, we have assumed a greater role of a facilitator. And as Mr. Elango and Mr. BP representative has said, during the COVID time, exemplary way we have shown the way how the supply chain disruptions which happened worldwide, how we have facilitated them, bringing the oil and gas into essential commodity. Of course, government, several wings of the government also helped. And the oil and gas, which has been locked up for a long period, and wherever is the DSF fields are there, we have put up for a round, and then we have facilitated in then all the aspects. And then subsequently the government also has brought in 2 additional director generals onto the DGH scenario, basically, to facilitate, because what was happening earlier was one DG was there, and to access the DG it was becoming difficult. Then they thought, probably technical department should be in divisions, it should be headed by the ADGs, and I come into DGH exactly during the, my tenure coincided almost with the beginning of the COVID-19 lockdown situation. I heading the exploration, my major job being the chief marketing officer, to market my exploration acreages with the goal of keeping 1/3 of the sedimentary basinal area of a 3.36 million square kilometers put into the exploration aspect of it, and also facilitating and approving the FDPs and other aspects of the producing chain to bring in, basically the potential which has locked in the subsurface to bring to the surface. And we have been accessible. Our doors are always open, irrespective of day and night. We have been receiving calls from the operator, even after the office hours also. We have been replying them. Suddenly if they want some decision to be done during, a MC has to be scheduled. Maybe weekend time it comes, and a Monday we would like to have a MC, and then probably their issues have to be approved, and let it be whether it's a budget, let it be whether it is some issue or the clarification. We have been readily coming forward to take up the issues and get it resolved. That's the role which we have been playing. That's how we have been facilitating both the domestic oil companies, let it be whether national oil companies or independent companies, both domestic as well as the global companies. And we have been approaching the global companies to come and invest. Unless until, as you are telling, perseverance. Exploration is a game where the perseverance pays. Without perseverance, exploration will not succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we heard not a regulator, but facilitator, and picking up phone calls in the nights, unusual. So thank you so much for all this. But now that you've declared yourself as the Chief Marketing Officer for Government of India in the ENP sector, why don't we have some of our industry panelists ask you a few things as to what you should do to make their life better. Mr. Elango, in operations, has it been easy or difficult? What do you want from them?
Yeah. See, throughout, the India started inviting the private sector into oil and gas sometime in the mid-90s. The regime that was governing that system was the production sharing contract, in which basically the risk investment is brought by the companies. If your exploration effort is successful, then you're allowed to invest in development. Then once you bring the field on production, you're allowed to recover the cost and then share what is called a profit petroleum with the Government of India on the way it is predetermined in the contract. The problem predominantly faced by the sector was that led to a lot of cost recovery audit issues. The government's entire focus was on how the money is spent by the companies. There was a lot of restriction on the money, on the budgeting, the way money is spent, etc., etc. That led to a lot of disputes between the contractor and the government, and the industry was virtually coming to a standstill. And the disputes were running into billions of dollars. The government wisely thought to review that model and introduced what is called revenue sharing contract model. Now, just before that, one of the most important reform that took place is setting up the national data repository, by which anywhere from the world on 365 days, the geological data of the country can be accessed by anyone who is interested, and a bidding round can be triggered. And one of the good things about the ENP sector is it always had a transparent bidding system. There's never been a single case of any kind of allegation about any wrongdoing in the sector. The bidding process has always been transparent. Now, the revenue sharing contract model really gave the contractor a lot of freedom in terms of how the money is spent, how the investment is made. The government role really comes in once a production starts, you share the revenue. That has really changed. I've been in the sector for almost 35 years, seen multiple regimes, and this revenue sharing contract model is finally found the right solution, in which there's a very transparent access to data, very transparent bidding process, and a very facilitating role, as Mr. Reddy pointed out, of DGH as such. A lot has been done really to what more the government can do. It's a very difficult question it has become, because government has done everything. But having said that, what is the issue facing the sector now is, despite all the efforts made by the government, you're not really seeing a large foreign direct investment, with the major exception of BP. And so that's really leads to the question of today the major oil companies really do not want to enter a new country to start something, not in the upstream side. Wherever they are present, they want to consolidate, mainly because of the energy transition question is bothering minds of multiple majors. That really leaves the option of government to focus on the Indian companies, which the government has rightly done by relaxing the technical criteria for entry. So you today have multiple smaller players also come into the ENP sector. But one of the big challenges is access to capital for smaller independent companies. That becomes a critical question, because a lot of risk investment is involved. Banks do not lend money to ENP sector. Therefore, access to capital becomes one of the key challenging things. And the industry has made some suggestion to the government that there is a cess called Oil Industry Development Cess that government collects from the crude oil produced in the country, the total cess collected runs into about 1,50,000 crores. Out of that, even if it's a small amount, is set up through a non-banking financial structure to lend risk capital to the sector. That would really see more players doing more wells. The point is, at the end of the day, in E&P, you have to drill the wells to determine whether you have oil and gas or not. There's no other way. Now, if you look at the track record or number of wells drilled in the last 5 years, there is actually a declining trend, which is very unfortunate. The total number of wells drilled onshore is below 500 wells in a year. That includes public sector as well as private sector. The total offshore wells drilled in the country is less than 150. So totally you're talking about 650 wells in a year to determine whether you have oil and gas or to develop the discoveries you have made. Just to give you a rough idea, in US, every year there's about 100,000 wells are drilled, minimum. So that's the kind of activity that need to be stepped up, which means more players, more capital, and more continue to reform policy. We can never feel that we have done enough.
Thank you so much for your elaborate answer. Mr. Elango mentioned about what has happened good to the sector and also through some challenges across. I'll come to Mr. Reddy and asking what are the newer ways of acreage awards that the government of India may think of. But before that, I also wanted to take the national oil companies' view on operations, ease. What would you like to do more? Is there a difference that you are facing between private sector and public, which at one time people used to complain about? What's your experience? Also, the point that Mr. Elango mentioned, number of wells, very interesting for you.
You switched the question from me to Manas?
Sharma, I will come back to you on the models.
You are on the last. So in this context, actually, every one of us are worried about. Every one of us are worried about the recent change in energy mix and COP26 and other things. We talk a lot about this. We are talking about cleaner energy. But then coming back to the core business, we would like to appreciate this, the fact that that the present changes in the health regime has brought in a encouragement to the parties, to the operators. And in the context, that has resulted in a paramount increase of the areas in operational areas in Oil India. The creation of NDR and the effort given by the government of India to carry out all this, the area which is not covered with seismic otherwise, for making the platform for exploration. And then also a lot has been gone towards actually creating an environment where all these restricted no-go areas in the East Coast has been recently cleared out of the persistent discussion with the other ministries. And now we are having lots of area for exploration in place. So these are certain steps that has been taken by the government in a very positive manner. And so in coming days, actually, we are looking forward to be more aggressively on this activity and see more participation in this case from Oil India's perspective. And coming to Oil India, we have actually seen that out of the all regimes, health has given us a better environment. And also, as you look at the count of wells, at this present day, we also should look at the situation that this OLP rounds has been floated, a matter of 3 years tenure, we need to drill the wells. So all these OLP rounds that has been bidded and been owned by the operators, we'll see the result of the drilling in coming years. So hopefully there will be more aggression in drilling and there will be that exploration that we need to carry out will be given a proper trust now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we are also happy that everyone should appreciate the fact that the offshore area which has been restricted for so many years has been opened up. Now its time is for exploration now. We should aggressively working on this together. And if we think that exploration is needed, the area is in offshore. So we need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So today we are sitting in a gas conclave and there was so much discussion on how markets are developing. Pankaj, How important is gas market development for, let's say, a company like yours as a representation? Pipeline, consumers going in for gas options, and any further development and use of gas. How do you find it important, and how has the policy, regulatory, infrastructure part of India supporting this?
Okay, let me begin with the policy framework first.
Sure.
Because one has seen some exceptional policy frameworks being carried out over the last few years. A few of them have been, as Elango mentioned out, not only moving away from a production sharing contract to a revenue sharing, which actually obviates the need for a control mechanism. So I think to Mr. Reddy's point, DGH truly is acting as a facilitator now. And in our case, which has always been a revenue share, we had a very minimalistic, I would say, more of guidance from DGH than of any intervention. So that way, it has really worked exceptionally well for us. Similar policy frameworks which have changed is on the marketing and pricing freedom, which have come in, moving CBM out of the entire capping mechanism in 2014-15, and then as late as 2022, having no regulation in terms of selling of crude. That entire thing has been dispensed away with. So you can sell it to anybody, whosoever gives you the best price for your product. So I think from that standpoint, we have moved from a very archaic kind of system to the latest or the most new age technologies. Even from the data framework, the data touch points that we have, the kind of data which is available on DGH sites is completely to the core. We can evaluate a lot of options even without having to drill a fresh set of wells. So from that standpoint, I think it has worked exceptionally well. One of the other point which came up during the discussion earlier was on the access to capital. So very recently, I think about 6 months back, DGH and the Secretary himself had organized a meeting in Mumbai with both the sides, ensuring that there is a very strategic focus from the government side to ensure that we tide over this gap also. So there were lenders or prospective lenders called upon, there were E&P players called upon, so that they have a joint forum where they discuss out any issues that the lenders may have or prospective lenders may have on understanding and bridging any gaps on that front. So I think there has been a very tactical shift over the last few years from both the government, the regulator, and even the producer side to come forward and making sure that we enhance the production. The whole idea is, as was discussed a little while back, gas is not a transition fuel. Gas is a fuel which will be there for decades. So gas has an important part in our life. It has to replace coal, which is the most polluting form. Our India's issue has been that 45% of our total energy basket is of coal. So gas can play a very pivotal part, whether it is hydrogen or methane or a biogas, which can be the cleanest form of energy and move towards the energy transformation and the energy transition. So I think from that standpoint, gas is the perfect and the most active player to play this role, and it is all there to up for it. I think the E&P players are all up to take up this opportunity and move forward.
Thank you so much, Vinod. We are at single digit. We wanted to move to 50-odd%. What is gas market development moving towards? Is it satisfactory for E&P companies?
It's quite an interesting phase that we are going through in the gas market development. A lot of progressive reforms have been done, both in terms of the gas pricing regulations, creating more infrastructure, transmission infrastructure, as well as retail distribution infrastructure through the city gas distribution licensing rounds. I think the key thing now to look at is, but as always, we'd always say that there's more needs to be done. What more needs to be done is to kind of actually, move away from this conundrum that people have described the gas is a transition fuel, not a transition fuel, and actually define the role that gas is playing as we move towards a low carbon energy future. So gas, we have to encourage more and more players to convert to gas by providing them with greater certainty of availability as well as, reducing the volatility on pricing. So these will be the factors, and by encouraging more market-based practices, you will bring in players who will actually help dampen the volatility of pricing by having innovative portfolios. And with that, you will be able to encourage more players to convert to gas. Gas clearly competes with liquid fuels, as as a fuel, as a cleaner fuel. I think the key areas where gas needs to be further encouraged, which I think Akhil spoke about in his previous chat, was around the role it can play to help overcome the intermittency of renewables and to help firm up renewables. We have actually done some analysis which says that if we actually combine solar wind hybrid with gas, you can truly have round the clock power. Whereas currently what is being offered as round the clock power in our view is not really what it should be on the tin. It is more assured power during peak periods but not round the clock. But gas can actually help you firm up and give you competitive round the clock power with a 95% plus reliability. That's something which I think we have to work towards creating that market for this product, which is a different product than what is currently being offered today. Also, some of the other sectors which are hard to decarbonize, like steel, for example. You could look at actually blending, encouraging more electric arc furnaces in the country today. Because if you invest in a new blast furnace today, you're locking in your carbon emissions for the next 50 years from that furnace. But if you invest in an electric arc furnace today, where you could use gas, then you could actually convert it to hydrogen once hydrogen becomes available. So there are several these ideas which are there, which can actually help grow the role of gas in the Indian economy to help the government achieve its goal of 15% share of gas.
Thank you so much. So Vinod talked about reforms at the consuming end, in the infrastructure part and policy. And that's very interesting to say that the gas market in India is under development.
I'll be totally amiss if I did not mention two things which will really help. One is inclusion of gas under GST, and the other is the unified pipeline tariff being implemented immediately, which Mr. Saraf is here. He was the architect of.
Very much. Well, this subject is not out of the room, Vinod. I think we should keep it live, burning, and take it as many times as possible. We understand the challenges of the states and the way the economy of India runs. So, to bring that question to Mr. Reddy, which he's waiting for, I must mention about an incident. I was sitting in Houston in a departure lounge. Next to my chair happened to be the CEO of a very large oil company. And he said, "You look to be from India." I said, "Yeah, I am an Indian." He says, "I've got a lot of Indians working in my company." So then we happened to talk about the oncoming acreage award rounds, and I asked that company, "Are you interested in coming?" He says, yeah, we definitely come there. We go to DGH, we pick up data, we analyze everything, and don't bid. I said, "Why don't you bid?" He says, "I'm still 15 years away." Then, this was about 12, 15 years back. And I'm really wondering, are those 15 years over for what Mr. Elango said? Will those companies, so-called, who probably have technologies, access to funds, etc., to come to India? So, Mr. Reddy, my question to you is, are our ways of getting companies to bid for acreage awards, be it Indian or otherwise, and bring in more financing, innovativeness, etc., going to change? So, just being provocative, I'm asking, are you going to have negotiated contracts or anything less?
Not really. First, let me answer your last question. It's not going to be a negotiated contract. As Mr. Elango said, negotiated contracts will always have certain blot on it. What sort of negotiation you have done? What are the facilities? What are the incentives which you are offering to the thing? Instead of that one, we believe in a transparent bidding mechanism. What we need to promote is, as you mentioned, the chief marketing manager, not only the chief marketing manager for exploration acreages, I would term DGH would play a role of tourism promotion board. What is that tourism? Tourism into my sedimentary basins. What is that? How I am promoting that one? NDR is a window, a data window which has been created. Probably if you look into the data which has been stored, millions of line kilometers of seismic data is there. As you are aware, India's oil and gas story is about 160 years old, both in terms of right from the oil industry beginning in the world, for that matter. The legacy data, enormous amount of data is there. And always it is said, oil is not there until you discover it. So unless until all this data is gathered and put it in one place, that is the NDR. NDR is playing the role of fulcrum for exploration in an exponential manner, how the exploration can be done in India. To say whether oil and gas is there or not there, or it is hiding somewhere, a proper exploration is required, for which first thing is what is required, the data which is stored. So what we have done is, we are in the process of enriching the data, as well as the showcasing the data, so that the global companies can come and look into the sedimentary basins. They might come for a tourism, but if they like the site, definitely they will establish themselves. Probably, like some wealthy people are constructing the houses in Switzerland and other places. The first they might have gone on tourism. The similar is the situation here. Once they look into the data and then come to the India, if they find the potential, and then the point which you are mentioning, you are sitting with a CEO. I really do not know which company CEO, but however, the time has come. You said almost 15 years, and maybe in another, maybe this year also, maybe or further 1 or 2 years, definitely there will be going to be a big bang approach, and the people are going to come. They are already in talk, and you have seen ExxonMobil entering into an MOU with the oil and gas ONGC, and Total is also coming into a big way. And then Chevron also entered into an MOU. I don't know, it's one of the CEOs of these companies, because we have facilitated a lot of data we have given to them. And for a long time, the raw data which has been obtained, which has been lying in the NDR, they were asking for the raw data to be exported to their state-of-the-art processing centers overseas. But that was not being allowed by our defense agencies because of certain concerns with regarding to the security concerns with regarding to, so basically in naval operations or the submarine operations or all those things. But I had to really go and present the case to the defense secretary in the presence of petroleum secretary, and then we also got involved, National Security Agency, NSA office also into the thing, and I invited a high-level naval team to the NDR. They have come and I explained to them how basically the seismic data which has been acquired maybe 10-15 years back, or even the different campaigns, this seismic data and processing elsewhere will not no way hamper the security of the nation. Ultimately, they got convinced. Only thing is, the right people in a right way, it has to be explained to the agencies. Then definitely the government will listen, government agencies will listen. Government is an institution. Ultimately, the few individuals in the government who decides about it. That's what we did. That is the breakthrough which has happened. Now they carried the complete data and they processed in their processing center. In fact, one of the recent visits, they have presented to me what is the processing results which they have seen, interesting features. And then in geology, what happens is out-of-box thinking will lead to a discovery. It is not that offshore Guyana oil exploration was not being done for years together, but a relook into the data, a relook into the way you approach a play-based exploration has led to a series of discoveries which have been made in Guyana. Wealth has been created for the host country, and wealth has been created for the oil company itself. Otherwise, when the COVID time is there, share price would have plummeted, but it has remained there, and the wealth has been created. And the similar structures, what happens is when a success happens elsewhere in the sedimentary basins, the way they were looking at the futures, which are reflected on the seismic sections, once you drill and test, then you realize, yes, this is the interesting feature which we need to look into, and when you drill, you will discover the oil and gas. A similar features probably they are observing in our East Coast. I've been keep on telling on several forums right by my young age, the Bay of Bengal almost emulates the Gulf of Mexico. Only thing is, yes, it has a wider opening in the south. That is the one thing which I have to see. Otherwise, the sediment influx is there from this one, from the centuries together or the millions of years together. Organic matter has accumulated in the Bay of Bengal. Only thing is it's cooked and then oil and gas generated. It has hiding somewhere. We need to find out because it is in the passive stratigraphic place which is there. And deciphering that on the seismic sections is a Herculean task, which you are interpreting subsurface and nature. So probably they are seeing such similar features in the East Coast, and very soon they will be coming and exploring. And once you discover, you say, why all this oil and gas has been evading us, but it is there already. Why our people fail to discover? But the failure and success, in fact, every failure has to be taken as a stepping stone in exploration. You need to learn lessons from the failure. Failure is, I won't call it as a failure, it is a step, how you look into the thing. Exploration is an iteration process. You will derive the benefits both from the success as well as the failure. Only thing is how you go in the flow chart. When you are facing a failure, you go back and relook at the data and then explore it. Otherwise, you put it for the production. I am sure we are going to discover, I would call it, giant oil fields, elephants. Elephants are hiding somewhere in the East Coast sedimentary basins. Only thing is we need to find out how we discover that and put to the use of the country. And energy transition, which everybody has been speaking in respect to investment. And it is a narration spoken in every oil and gas conference. Really, it shouldn't be spoken actually. Then it prevents the financial institutions not to put the money in the oil and gas. They think the future of oil and gas is very less. And our own oil CEOs, the global CEOs are speaking of energy transition. Energy will never transfer it. Have we got away with the coal? When the Nord Stream pipeline was done, now everybody is firing the coal-based power plants. Energy is only transforming from one mode to the other mode. When the civilization started, we were burning the wood. Where from that energy? The energy which is derived from the sun, entrapped in the chlorophyll, and it got entrapped into the wood. The wood was used as the energy source. And when that wood gets buried, it forms to the coal. That the energy gets trapped in the coal, which has transformed from the, basically, wood to coal. And then further cooking takes place from coal to oil and gas. So oil and gas, again, you're coming back to the gas, and then we are moving to the solar. It's only a transformation which is taking place, and whether it is an energy transition or transformation, we are not going to get away the first source of the energy. Even today in villages, we are cooking the firewood. In the developed world, probably they are going for the camps in the high altitude regions, and again they are using the firewood there. It is not that they have an electric furnace. So energy, all forms of energy is required, especially in the context of India. We need much more energy. World over, maybe the oil and gas maybe go down. The consumption of oil and gas in India, it is going to increase. In spite of all the energy mix which is going to come, we need to have lot of energy. It will have, we need energy both from renewable, non-renewable, and we need to produce more and more oil and gas, which is required. And that narration of energy transition, we should not be prevented investment coming in. When they spoke about the investment, now we are been thinking of reserve-based funding. We recently organized event in Bombay. That's what exactly we told the institutions. You are giving to the other companies based on the projections. Whereas here, oil and gas is there, reserves are certified by the global companies. Keep that as a collateral, give the funding, so that when that oil and gas is brought to the surface, your payouts will be given from that. So don't say that oil and gas is not there, it is there. A proper certification has to be taken. So that is the reason we have told even the global certifying agencies. So DSF, several fields have been awarded, and the bigger fields are also there. Please come and give the certification for these reserves. These reserves, against these reserves, if you give a funding, a small player can put in that, and then oil and gas can be brought to the utilization of mankind, and to improve our living standards, especially for India. So what has been telling, the developed countries, they said, they developed their industry and their comforts and all. Now they are telling, don't do oil exploration, don't do coal exploration, all those things. But what happened? All manufacturing bases have been shifted to the other countries. Manufacturing bases mainly to China, India, Bangladesh, Philippines and all. And then you say you carbon neutral. How is it possible, carbon neutral and all those things? You have already filled the bucket with carbon. And now you are preaching the other people, be carbon neutral. So it is not probably meeting our needs and then looking into the energy transition, looking into the oil and gas. I am here to say, encourage the oil and gas exploration, especially in India. Thank you very much. These are my comments, and we are asking more and more investors to come in, and sure global companies will come and invest in India.
Thank you so much. Very, very interesting points of views. Very, very interesting points of views in a hydrocarbon conclave. If these languages is not spoken, I would have felt not very encouraged. Obviously, it's an extremely contentious subject. extremely contentious. And I don't think time or this particular occasion would be sufficient for us to find an answer to all of these questions. But before I give a question opportunity to you, let me go around the panelists once more. In 2009, 10, 11, we were asked to do analysis of the market as to where is the skill for exploration production going to come from. The oil prices were extremely high. There was so much demand for assets, for drilling rigs, and people. And there was a lot of shifting of talent from Mr. Saraf's company to other companies. And indeed, we wanted that new skill to get generated in the market. Today, when I sit on academic councils of institutes and universities and see the young talent's inclination, those days, young people had expressed, oh, that's a sector with, helmets and oil rigs and black oil. So maybe the young talent will never enter. Today, they are not entering because they feel decarbonization has taken swing, oil and gas is being considered to be phased out, and is that my future? And I'm sure some of the audience will have comment on this. Let's consider that decarbonization is here, and we will have to walk towards that in the best possible manner. So let me ask a very, very inquisitive question from my end to the panelists. If I may start with Vinod. Vinod, how is exploration production industry contributing to decarbonization?
So one thing that we have to be very clear about is that, as we have spoken, the world needs all forms of energy. And, and different countries will have different facets of it, but oil and gas will continue to be part of the world energy mix for many more years to come. The question is, can we produce it in a manner where we neutralize the carbon and offset the carbon that we generate in producing it and in using it? As a company, I think we have committed as BP that we will be net zero by 2050 or sooner. And I know a lot of other companies and countries have also taken on similar targets. So there are technologies available. It's about, at a very basic level, if you kind of think about it, you are going to generate or have a carbon emission. How do you capture it? In an economic manner, can you capture it? Can you store it? Can you utilize it? So those are some of the challenges that are there. What I'm very encouraged by is that there is a lot of work happening around the world on this, and that solutions are being developed. Now some of those solutions may work somewhere, may not work somewhere else, but the idea is that as we work through this collectively, we'll find the solutions which will make this happen. One thing that will really help encourage this further is if there is, and the government is already seized with this, I think there's a draft bill already which the government is looking to put into the parliament on carbon pricing. So if, as they say, if you want to give emphasis to something, put a price on it, and then, you will see the right signals develop and the right market behaviors develop. So if you price carbon emissions and you therefore encourage people to do something about their carbon emissions to avoid having that cost, I think that's the right way to drive and accelerate the technology development to capture, utilize, and store carbon.
Thank you so much, Vinod. So, Mr. Sharma, would you be offering your wells for sequestering carbon? Will Pankaj, your pipelines be ready for infusing hydrogen in them, one by one? Yes, sir.
In Oil India's context, I will just say this. First of all, switching over to gas economy is a cleaner version of hydrocarbon. And as we are all aware that we will be phasing out in a slow manner, we will be utilizing this energy mix for a pretty long time. And from Oil India's context, we have been operating in that area for pretty long years. So what we are looking at it is in an angle like we are carrying out some kind of aggressive feasibility study of our old reservoirs, which are actually depleted, where we can actually store carbon dioxide as a storage things. Since carbon dioxide and its association with water mixes difficult situations. So we are carrying out a feasibility study and see around 100 odd reservoirs have been shortlisted to find out whether these things passes through this screening. Once it is done, then we have our all refineries and other things are also having carbon emissions. We'll be providing them help to capture carbon and then we store it on the reservoirs.
Interesting.
So that is basically a storage approach, carbon CCS approach that we are taking up. This is in feasibility stage. And also we are taking, as you switch over to cleaner energy, then this particular transition of going to less carbon emission will be easier. And then in this context, actually, although carbon plays the role, actually, the preparedness also is very vital, you know. In our case, we have sufficient gas reserves, but that in the presently laid all these infrastructures that has been done in this part of Northeast will play a vital role in monetizing the whole thing. We'll be able to send this, produce more gas, and then it can be produced through these integrated lines across the areas.
Very good.
So those are the actually gas, you know, being not like oil. It has to be continuously produced and need a market at immediately on the context. So these are certain preparedness actually aggressively has been done. So coming days it will be definitely cleaner and better.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Pankaj?
See, Deepak, one interesting facet that we forget about CBM is this is the same gas which over a maturity cycle, let's say over the next 20, 30 years, would have otherwise got released into the system. So from that standpoint, we are already contributing towards ensuring that the same CH4 is not naturally released to the environment, and we are safeguarding the environment in the interest of the, the world at large. So we are doing that activity even today. But going forward, we have one of our group company which is working towards carbon sequestering. CCUS is being put to motion, and that part is currently on beyond the feasibility study, which has been put to action, motion.
Mike.
And the third aspect is that, to Mr. Reddy's point, Essar is committed to making sure that we invest into oil and gas in India. We are keen to make investments in developing shale. We have known that we have shale reservoirs into our field. So going next year, we will be drilling exploration wells on the shale side, which will be as deep as 3,500 meters, to ensure that we continue to contribute towards the nation-building activity of making gas one of the most viable and a large component to the overall energy mix.
Thank you so much. May I take the liberty of an audience question? Thank you.
Hi, I'm just going to request the entire panel to bear with me because this query of mine is 2 years in the making. I used to work with an oil and gas manufacturing company, so I've sat down quite a lot with DGH, Oil India, ONGC, as well as SR, CBM tenders, which started coming out about 2 years ago. Absolutely agree with Mr. Reddy that, instead of energy transition, it should be energy addition, because weighted averages just won't match the energy production versus energy consumption. I myself was trying to bring a lot of geothermal, CCUS, CCS, and hydrogen. I'm still trying to bring in hydrogen through my network. Biggest question for me is the tender and the investment thought process that you brought up. Here's the question finally. The investment and the tendering process, which is fairly transparent, but what about you don't know what you don't know? So the tendering system doesn't allow you or any of the PSUs to say, what if you give me X plus 1? I'm asking for X, you can only quote for X. What if I have the plus 1?
Got it.
How do you go about it?
I think we'll take the answer to this question offline because this is to the whole house, I guess. I would ask if you promise some decarbonization also, will you give me a weightage for that? This remains a question in procurement systems. I'll take last question. I know organizers are running short of time for this event. Mr. Elango, would we, like steel companies are promising green steel to be delivered, which means that complete carbon emitted before delivering steel is neutralized, will we ever imagine gas companies and oil companies delivering green gas and green oil?
I think ultimately every sector will dance to the tune set by the investors, right? So the investors are setting the tune on ESG now. Now, it has not impacted in India in a big way, but definitely in a global scheme. So ultimately I see a day in which the investor in respect of private companies and government in respect of public sector companies will show that card and ensure we develop.
What an
deliver these.
optimism. Thank you so much. So he's announcing that ENP companies will nullify scope 1 definitely, if possible scope 2 and then eventually to scope 3. Thank you so very much. It was so interesting for me to moderate this panel. Such a lovely response to all the questions from the panelists. I wouldn't have expected anything like, and amazing audience.